Welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. My name is Gretchen Monke, and I am your host. For more than 3 decades, I've been a summer camp director, and I've had the privilege of working with thousands of children, teenagers, young adult counselors, and parents. I really enjoy sharing stories, tips, and ideas to help others who care about young people raise a generation of kind, self-reliant, optimistic kids who become thriving adults. If you're interested in summer camp, parenting, or happiness, you've come to the right place. For this episode of the podcast, I'm here with my favorite high school English teacher, who happens to be my daughter, Gretchen Monke. Gretchen, welcome to the Sunshine Parenting Podcast.
Thank you, Mom. I'm happy to be here.
So it's September, and this is the month that kids go back to school and parents have, back to school nights and have to start navigating their kids' academics. So what I wanted you to share is from your perspective as a teacher, what are ways that parents can best support their kids in school? So let's just start with that. What are some of the things that you've seen parents do that's really helpful with their kids and is helpful to their success at school?
I think one thing that parents can do that is really helpful is just helping their child take more ownership over their education. So when they see they have an F in the grade book, oftentimes parents will email me directly. But teaching your child to communicate with their teacher is really important. So I've already had, I think, 5 or 6 parents email me this year, and I always give this advice on back to school night to parents. It's really important that you teach your child how to communicate with their teacher. And even if you have to rehearse that conversation with your child, it really promotes those communication skills early on in the school year.
Definitely. It reminds me of, Julie Lythcott-Haim's book, How to Raise an Adult. One of her big premises is that learning to talk to who she calls strangers or other adults is really important for kids, and teachers are the perfect example. Here's someone that you're going to see every day at school, so hopefully you should get some level of comfort with. That's the great person to start learning how to communicate directly with rather than trying to communicate through your parents. So having them take ownership and sort of deal with their own situations is one of the things that you think is helpful with kids. What about that example of, a child who is not doing well in your class? What do you think it is that is going to help them do better?
I think organizational skills are really important too, and helping some children need more help with that. But helping your child make sure they have an organized agenda and binder and that they're keeping that clean every week. A class that I'm teaching this year is AVID, and in AVID, the whole premise of the class is being ready for college readiness. And so we do a lot of organizational skills work with those students. And something I've noticed is we are a one-to-one Chromebook school. And when you open their Google Drives, talking about digital organization as well, they are all a mess. And we had to spend a whole day organizing these students' Google Drives just so that they would know where to find all of their work. So I think a lot of students and children don't have those skills already, and it's really important that we explicitly teach them how to organize themselves so that they feel less stressed about what they have to complete every week.
I wish all teachers in all schools would have that as part of their curriculum. I know in Jessica Leahy's The Gift of Failure, she talks about how junior high kids really need help with that organizational stuff, and that it should be like a homeroom requirement that they clean out their backpack and go through things. Because I have to say, as a parent of like middle school and high schoolers, it is hard as the parent to be that person getting them to organize. They're more resistant to me doing it than you, their English teacher or their AVID teacher. Mm-hmm. So I think as a parent, I will just say to any teachers listening, if you can help with some of those organizational steps, if it just means like, okay, everybody get out your agendas or get out your binders, or let's dump out our backpacks and clean them out, that would be so helpful, because it's really hard, I think, as a parent to serve that role too with kids. Okay, so another question, just because AVID, I think, is a really cool program. What does AVID stand for? Because I had not heard of it until you started teaching it. What does it stand for?
AVID stands for Advancement via Individual Determination. Okay. And it's really important, I think, to emphasize with those kids that it is individual determination. So I'm there to give them the skills they need or help them learn those skills so that they're prepared for college and they can take rigorous classes in high school. But it's not my responsibility. And I think that's sometimes a place of confusion with parents as well, is that teachers can provide all of this support. They can provide organizational skills. They can provide writing skills, communication skills. But ultimately, it is the student's responsibility to take that information and learn it and apply it. And I think sometimes parents place that responsibility on teachers. And, I can teach your kid how to organize their e-binder on Google Classroom, and I can teach them how to write a paragraph, but I can't do it for them.
Right. And I think that's part of it is I think parents struggle a little because when their kid isn't doing it, that's why they automatically reach out to the teacher because maybe they don't feel like they can do it. They're kind of lost in terms of trying to get their kids some motivation. What might be helpful is if you share something that I actually took this tool from you and used it at camp this summer, the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. Mm-hmm. Talk about that a little bit because I think that's a tool that even parents who don't have their kids in AVID or something like that, even that book, I think could be helpful. So talk about what that book covers.
So the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens talks about 7 habits that you can help your teen develop in order to just improve different aspects of their life. So this could be turning in their schoolwork on time or developing better relationships with friends. And so in my AVID class right now, we're focusing on 1 habit every week. So this coming week, the focus is being proactive. And a lot of students are used to being reactive. Oh no, I missed an assignment. And kind of blaming other people and becoming reactive when something doesn't go their way in school or there's an issue with friends. And so teaching them to take ownership over their schoolwork and be proactive about getting their schoolwork in on time. This past week in my class, we talked about how a lot of students don't have the best relationships with their parents right now. And that they can even take the skills they learn about being proactive in school and apply it to their home life, right? You have control over your relationship with your parents and your relationship with your friends, and you can take steps even if your friends or parents aren't taking those steps in order to improve those.
Oh, I loved it when you shared with me before we were recording the podcast about, so this was one of the goals, like you had your kids each come up with goals, and you mentioned how many of them had as one of their goals having a better relationship with their parents?
So I asked my students, where do you want to see improvement in your life? So we're reading this book about habits. Where do you want to apply these skills we're learning? Do you need better organizational skills, or do you need to establish better friendships? And about 5 or 6 students in my class said, I really want to work on fostering a better relationship with one or both of my parents. And we talked a lot about how, you can't change the way your parents are. You can't change other people, but you can definitely change how you approach every relationship. And without my help, these students were brainstorming ways that they could foster more positive relationships with their parents at home, which I found really moving.
Oh, I think that's so sweet. And I think a lot of times when kids are at that age that you're working with, like the junior high, high school age, is often a time that's sort of a more challenging time as a parent because, your kids are naturally, they're trying to separate from you. And it's sometimes awkward at that time where they, kind of don't want to be like mama's boy or mama's girl, and they want to be their own person. And so sometimes that comes across as like they don't want to be with you, they don't like you. But it's really cute to know and good to understand that they still want that relationship. It's still really important to them, even if they're not acting like it that much. Like, they do want to spend time with their friends more at that age. That's natural to be gravitating more towards your friends and your social life. But it's really nice to know, and I think it's a good message for parents for them to know that when you ask your students, and these are 9th graders, right?
These are 9th graders.
When you ask them, for many of them, that is something that is important to them that they want to work on. And I wonder how many of them, the parents know that.
Right. I think a lot of the times the parents don't think, a parent might not be satisfied with the way their relationship is going with their child, but they might not think of it, on the flip side, your child might be feeling the same way.
Right.
They might want that connection as well.
Right. So I guess anything else that you would think of that just in terms of parents' relationships with teachers? I know you've had some experience this year. When you think of the parents who are the best to work out with, you've already mentioned that they kind of encourage their kids to come talk to you and to be more proactive. Is there anything else that you can think of that parents can do to be really supportive of their children's sort of like academic growth and kind of their relationship with school and that kind of thing?
So I would say if a student, especially if a student is struggling, parents definitely know their child oftentimes better than their teachers because you are around your child all the time and they're your child. So I don't know every one of my students as well as their parents know them. But what I do know is how to teach them these skills. So if you have any advice on how to work with your child specifically, that can be really helpful for me, especially if they're struggling in my class. So knowing some of their interests and what they enjoy, I think that is really helpful. And also if you have a child who is struggling to develop that independence and autonomy and is maybe nervous talking to their teachers, something that has worked well is a parent has emailed me and said, hey, would you mind prompting this discussion with my student? So I know they have this grading concern and I don't want to be the one getting involved in this, but could you maybe ask my student, is there anything that you want to tell me today? And so that has worked out really well because a parent will kind of say, hey, my child actually needs this, but I want them to come talk to you. And so I'll walk over to them and casually say, hey, do you want to meet with me about anything later? And then that allows them to kind of take those baby steps to directly communicating with adults and their teachers.
Oh, I love that example. And it reminds me just too that I think with raising our kids, it's really a partnership. And I think of this a lot with camp. It's the same thing. We need to communicate with each other. So if parents have some insights or suggestions that can help us be more successful when we're working with their kids, let's all share that information. It shouldn't be shouldn't be us against them. It shouldn't be like, oh, the teacher gave my child a bad grade, so I'm against the teacher. No, your teacher's your partner. And boy, if you use that partnership, I love that example of if a parent says, oh, my kid's kind of shy, and just you can work together to help that kid develop these important skills. I love that example. That's really great.
I would say the other big thing is just, a little bit of grace and be a little bit forgiving with teachers. You have your 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 children, and I'm working with over 150 students this year. So I would love to give every student individual attention, and I would love to talk to every parent. But it's hard to balance all of that. So just approaching teachers with patience and knowing that they are working with a lot of different students who have so many different needs. And I value all of those needs and I value every student as an individual, but it's oftentimes hard to help everyone at once.
Right. So even if it's just like the grace to say, hey, I know it's the start of the year and it's busy, but when you have time, would you mind sitting with my child or meeting with me about such and such? Just like, I really love that. It's so funny because this week, your little brother started at a new school and the head of the school gave just such a great talk. And it was about not expecting perfection from our students, like not expecting them or demanding of them that they're like perfect in everything, and more kind of focusing on developing their curiosity and love of learning, and not that they didn't expect parents to be perfect or to always have the perfect response to kids, and that they would appreciate that same grace in return. And I just love that. And we all kind of laughed, but I was like, okay, if we all just went through life a little bit more cognizant that we're all trying. Nobody wants to be, a pain to anybody else, but we need to just be a little more forgiving and understanding that for seeing other people's perspectives. I think that's really important. So, well, this has been really helpful, and I think I appreciate what you and other teachers do. I think it's an incredibly challenging and hard job, and it's also just so amazingly important. This summer at camp with our 9th and 10th grade girls, we did an exercise where we asked them to write down somebody who was one of their role models and what the traits were of that person that they really want to kind of emulate and strive for. So many of them put either their mother or a teacher. And like, they would say like my ninth grade English teacher or my eighth grade social studies teacher. And I just, looking at that list, parents and teachers are most likely to have the biggest impact on kids. And so what a great thing that you're doing, being a teacher. So thank you on behalf of all parents. And I think hopefully this is helpful to parents as you start this new year to remember that teachers' hearts are to help grow your kids into these great human beings, and so is yours. So we're all on the same team, so that partnership is really, really important. So anyway, Gretchen, thank you for being on the podcast. It's been fun having you as a guest.
Thank you so much. It's been fun chatting with you.
We'll do it again sometime.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of the Sunshine Parenting Podcast. For notes and links to everything Gretchen and I discussed, visit my website at sunshine-parenting.com and search for episode 53. If you don't already get my weekly email, I would love it if you would join my community by subscribing. You can access the email subscription link on my website. One of the books that we discussed in this episode and that I highly recommend if you are more interested in this topic of parent-teacher partnerships is The Gift of Failure by Jess Leahy. I interviewed her in a previous podcast episode, and I'll put a link to that one in the show notes for this episode. But I'm going to leave you with a quote from her chapter on parent-teacher partnerships from The Gift of Failure. Despite tensions between parents and teachers, decades of research shows that positive family-school relationships are vital to student success. Positive parent-teacher partnerships don't just benefit students, they are a boon to everyone involved. Teachers who encourage parental involvement in school are rated more favorably than teachers who do not, even in unrelated areas as educational effectiveness. Students learn more when families are involved in their education, and parents feel more engaged and invested in their child's education when teachers invite them into the process.
This podcast is a proud member of Parents on Demand, a network of high-quality shows for families just like yours. Download our free network app on Apple and Android and listen to your favorite episodes on the go.